I remember the smell first, not the burning that came later, and you grow numb to it eventually, if you survive long enough. No, what I remember from those first days after the Scolum Psychana released me into the Ordo Hereticus's care is the smell of the reading room where they kept the confessions. Old parchment and fear sweat, a particular staleness that clung to documents sealed in wax and stored in lightless vaults for decades, sometimes centuries. The confessors would bring them to us, these testimonies of the damned, and we would read them aloud to each other in that cold stone chamber beneath the cathedral. This was how they taught us, not through doctrine or prayer, though there was plenty of that, but through the actual words of witches, their justifications, their lies, their final moments of clarity before the pyre or the bolt or whatever mercy the Inquisition deemed appropriate. I was 19 when I read my first confession. A woman from a mining colony on the Outer Rim. Can't remember which one now. They all blur together after a while. She'd been accused of precognition, of knowing which tunnels would collapse before they fell, and she'd saved 17 men over the course of 2 years before someone reported her. The confession was 40 pages long. She spent most of it explaining that she'd only wanted to help, that the Emperor himself had granted her this gift to preserve his servants, that she prayed every night for forgiveness if she'd somehow erred. The last page was different, shorter. After they'd shown her the implements, after the first session with the pain glove, she'd recanted everything. Admitted she'd heard voices in the deep places beneath the mine. Admitted they'd shown her things, beautiful things, impossible colors that had no name in Gothic or any human tongue. Admitted she'd welcomed them. The confessor who handed me that document was named Sebastien. He was old, maybe 70, with burn scars across the left side of his face from some ancient case. He watched me read it, all 40 pages, and when I finished, he asked me what I thought. I told him she'd been deceived, that clearly she'd been a good woman corrupted by forces she couldn't understand, that perhaps mercy would have been more appropriate than execution. He smiled at me then, and it wasn't kind. He said I'd learn. He said they all started with mercy. That was 9 years ago. I learned. The first witch I burned myself was a child, 12 years old, maybe 13. This was on a shrine world, one of those places where the entire economy runs on pilgrimage and the sale of blessed trinkets. We'd received reports of stigmata appearing on statues in the Western Cathedral complex, blood weeping from the eyes of the Emperor's effigy. Usually that sort of thing is fraud, some enterprising priest with a syringe and a flair for theater. But this was real. We could feel it the moment we entered the cathedral grounds. The air had weight to it, a pressure behind the eyes that made you want to blink, to look away, to leave. Brother Sergeant Marcus, who'd been with the witch-hunting cadre for 15 years, vomited the moment we crossed the threshold. Said later he'd felt something looking at him, something vast and patient and utterly without compassion. We found the boy in the catacombs beneath the main altar. He was praying. That's what made it worse, I think. What's always made it worse. He was kneeling in front of a small shrine he'd built himself, just a crude thing made of bones and scraps of holy parchment, and he was praying with such fervor, such desperate sincerity, that for a moment I thought we'd made a mistake. But the shrine was wrong. The symbols were almost correct, the prayers almost the right words, but there were inversions, subtle corruptions that made my teeth ache to look at them. And the bones weren't animal bones. We'd been finding desiccated corpses throughout the cathedral complex for weeks. Pilgrims who'd arrived alone, who wouldn't be missed for months, if ever. The boy looked up at us with tears streaming down his face, and he said, "I've been so faithful. Why won't he answer me?" He meant the Emperor, of course. He'd been abandoned here, we learned later. Parents died of flux fever, and the cathedral had too many orphans already, so he'd been turned out to beg or starve. He'd prayed for help, for food, for warmth during the cold season, for anything, and something else had answered instead. Something that whispered it was the Emperor's true voice, that the priests were liars and gatekeepers, that he was special, chosen, blessed. It had taught him a better way to pray, had shown him how to make offerings that would be heard, had filled him with such joy, such certainty, that he'd murdered 17 people over the course of 4 months, and felt righteous doing it. I was the one who lit the pyre. They made me do it because I was still new, still soft, and they wanted to see if I'd break. The boy didn't scream at first. He kept praying, his better prayers, the corrupted ones, and the air around the pyre began to shimmer like heat haze, but wrong, dimensionally wrong, angles that hurt to perceive. Brother Sergeant Marcus shot him in the head before whatever was trying to manifest could complete the transition. Mercy, of a sort. The body burned for 3 hours, and the smoke was purple and smelled like roses. We stayed until there was nothing left but ash, and then we burned the ash, and then we salted the ground, and we never spoke of it again. That night I dreamed of the boy's face. Not afraid, not in pain, but radiant with faith. Absolute certainty that he was doing the right thing, that he was holy. I've had that dream 943 times since then. I started counting after the first year. The Ordo Hereticus operates on the principle that most people, given the opportunity, will choose damnation. Not because they're evil, though some are, certainly, but because damnation is easier. It offers answers instead of uncertainty. It provides comfort in a universe specifically designed to grind human beings into paste. The Imperium is a meat grinder spanning 1,000,000 worlds, and most citizens will never know a moment of joy or peace or even basic comfort in their entire abbreviated lives. Work until you die. Pray that your death serves the Emperor's purpose. Hope that your suffering wasn't meaningless. That's the promise. That's what we offer. The ruinous powers offer more. They offer everything. Strength, knowledge, pleasure, transformation. They offer meaning and purpose, and the intoxicating certainty that you matter, that you're special, that the universe recognizes you as an individual worthy of attention. It's all lies, of course. The gifts corrupt, the knowledge drives you mad, the pleasure becomes agony, the transformation leaves you a shrieking impossibility, begging for death. But by the time you realize that, it's too late. You're already damned, already lost, already something that needs to be put down like a rabid animal. My job is to find these people before the transformation completes. Sometimes before it even begins. That's the real trick of witch hunting. Identifying corruption before it manifests. Reading the signs in a person's behavior, their words, their associations. We're taught to recognize patterns. Someone who asks too many questions about the nature of the warp. Someone who seems too lucky, or too knowledgeable, or too charismatic. Someone whose presence makes you uncomfortable in ways you can't quite articulate. Learn to trust that discomfort. Learn to see the micro-expressions, the verbal tics, the tiny inconsistencies that indicate hidden knowledge or secret practices. Learn to apply pressure and watch how they respond. I've interrogated 4,172 people over the last 9 years. I've signed the execution orders for 3,908 of them. The math doesn't add up, I know. The remainder were released, cleared of suspicion, sent back to their lives with an apology from the Inquisition and a mark in their permanent record that will follow them forever, closing doors, inviting scrutiny, ensuring they'll never be fully trusted again. Some of them probably were innocent. Probably. But probably isn't a certainty, and in this work, uncertainty kills. Uncertainty is how a single corrupted astropath brings down an entire fleet. How a possessed bureaucrat redirects planetary tithes to feed a cult. How a daemon manifests in the middle of a hive spire and kills 20 million people before we can contain it. So we err on the side of caution. We burn the suspicious along with the guilty. We investigate rumors and anonymous accusations and psychic premonitions that might be nothing more than paranoia or personal grudges. We tear apart lives and families and communities on the barest thread of evidence because the alternative is worse. The alternative is another Horus heresy, another age of strife, another long night of old night where humanity almost died screaming in the dark. They teach you this at the Skolum. Drill it into your skull until it's reflex. The individual is nothing. The Imperium is everything. 1 life, 1,000 lives, 1,000,000 lives, it doesn't matter. What matters is preservation of the species, continuation of the Emperor's vision, maintenance of the structures that keep humanity alive in a universe that wants us extinct. You are a tool, a weapon, a necessary evil. Accept this, embrace it, find meaning in it, or break beneath its weight. I've watched 63 people break. Most of them killed themselves. A few had to be restrained, sedated, eventually lobotomized and turned into servitors. There's a kind of irony in that, spending years hunting witches only to end up as a shambling meat machine that empties waste receptacles in some administratum complex. But it's service, in its way, still serving, still useful. The worst case I ever handled was on a hive world. Upper middle levels, not quite spire but well above the underhive sump. A series of murders, all women, all found in their apartments, with symbols carved into their skin. Post-mortem carvings at least, small mercy there. The symbols were chaotic in nature but crude, like someone working from descriptions rather than true knowledge. We thought it was a cult in its early stages, maybe a single individual trying to summon something they didn't understand. Standard procedure. Lock down the district, interrogate everyone, follow the evidence. Took us 3 weeks to identify the killer. His name was Victor Har, worked as a maintenance engineer for the district's water reclamation system. 47 years old, married 22 years, 3 children, all adults, clean record, spotless employment history, regular attendance at shrine services, model citizen. His wife reported him after she found the trophies hidden in their storage unit. Teeth, mostly, some hair, a few pieces of jewelry. We brought him in, and he confessed immediately, seemed almost relieved. Walked us through every murder in meticulous detail, explaining his methodology, his selection process, the ritualistic elements. He'd been doing it for 9 years, 23 victims total. We'd only found 7. He told us where to find the rest. When I asked him why, he looked at me with perfectly clear, rational eyes and said, "Because they told me to." No voices in his head, no visions or possession or corruption. He'd found a book, years ago, discarded in the recycle levels, old, damaged, most of the pages missing. But what remained showed symbols and described rituals, and it said that if you made the right offerings, the right sacrifices, they would grant you blessings, make you strong, make you important, make your life mean something. He'd spent 9 years murdering innocent women and carving their skin with symbols he barely understood, trying to contact powers he couldn't even name, and nothing had ever answered him. No voices, no visions, no corruption at all. He was completely, utterly mundane. Just a man who'd found something he shouldn't have, and believed what it told him, and acted on those beliefs with ruthless efficiency. A killer, certainly. A monster, absolutely. But not a witch. Not corrupted. Not touched by anything except human evil and human stupidity. We burned him anyway. Had to. The symbols he'd carved were accurate enough that repetition might eventually attract attention, might open a channel even if his own efforts had failed. Can't risk it. Can't leave that thread dangling. His wife and children were interrogated, cleared, relocated to another hive under new names. Their lives destroyed for the crime of proximity. The book was incinerated in a blessed furnace, and the ashes scattered into a solar flare. Victor Har died screaming my name, begging me to understand he'd never meant any real harm. He just wanted to matter, just wanted to be special, just wanted to be seen. I put 17 bolt rounds into his pyre just to make sure. Went home that night and drank an entire bottle of sacramental wine. Woke up the next morning and filed my report and moved on to the next case because that's what we do. That's all we can do. The thing about this work that nobody tells you, that they can't tell you because you have to learn it yourself, is how it changes your relationship with faith. I was devout when I started. Truly, genuinely devout. I believed in the Emperor's divinity, in the righteousness of the Imperium, in the necessity of our mission. I prayed every day, sometimes multiple times, reciting the catechisms and litanies I'd learned as a child. I found comfort in ritual, in the certainty of doctrine, in the idea that there was a plan, a purpose, a meaning to the suffering. That faith erodes. Not quickly, not all at once, but gradually, like water wearing away stone. Every witch you burn, who begs for the emperor's mercy. Every innocent you interrogate until they confess to crimes they didn't commit just to make the pain stop. Every child who turns out to be corrupted beyond salvation. Every good person who made one mistake, trusted the wrong stranger, read the wrong book, thought the wrong thoughts. The emperor doesn't intervene, doesn't send signs or comfort or guidance. The cathedrals remain cold, stone, and empty words. The prayers go unanswered. The suffering continues. You start to wonder if he's even there, if he was ever there, if the whole thing isn't just an elaborate lie we tell ourselves to justify the grinding horror of existence. But then you see what happens to the people who stop believing, the ones who turn to other powers, other promises, the corruption that follows, the transformation, the things they become. And you realize it doesn't matter if the emperor is real or not, if he's a god or just a corpse on a throne, or a psychic battery keeping the Astronomicon lit. What matters is that the alternative is worse, demonstrably, empirically, horrifically worse. So you keep going, keep burning, keep hunting. Not because you believe anymore, not really, but because someone has to. Because the work is necessary. Because if you stop, if everyone stops, then the darkness wins, and the darkness is real. The darkness is patient. The darkness is waiting for us to falter, to hesitate, to show mercy at the wrong moment. One slip and it's over. One moment of weakness and 1 billion souls are forfeit. I am 31 years old and I look 50. My hair is grey, my hands shake, I have ulcers and chronic insomnia, and something growing in my lungs that the Medicae can't identify but say is probably benign. Probably. I wake up every night at 03:00 hours exactly, drenched in sweat, trying to remember which face I'm dreaming about, which one of the thousands I've killed or failed to save. Sometimes I can't remember my own name for several minutes after waking. Just sit there in the dark, in my small cell with its narrow cot and shrine to the emperor, trying to piece together who I am and why I'm here. The Ordo gives us optional counseling. I've never attended, most of us haven't. What would we say? That we're tired? That we're broken? That we see the faces of dead children every time we close our eyes? They know. Of course they know. They're counting on it. The broken ones are more thorough, more ruthless, more willing to do what's necessary because they've already lost everything else. We're weapons, remember. Tools. You don't counsel a bolter about the morality of its purpose. You maintain it, you aim it, and when it stops functioning, you replace it. I have 3 years left on my active duty cycle, assuming I survive that long. The average lifespan for a witch hunter is 12 years from commission. I'm at 9. The ones who make it past 12 usually transfer to administrative positions, training roles, positions where they can use their experience without being in direct contact with the corrupted. I've thought about volunteering for that. Teaching new recruits at the Skolum, passing on what I've learned, helping them avoid the mistakes I made. But I can't imagine it. Can't imagine being anywhere else, doing anything else. This is who I am now. This is all I am. Take away the hunting, and there's nothing left. Just an empty shell, in a grey uniform, going through the motions of life without any understanding of why. There was a woman once. Another witch hunter, assigned to my cadre for a joint operation on a forge world. Her name was Christina, and she'd been doing this for 6 years, and she understood. We didn't talk about it explicitly, didn't share our doubts or fears, or the dreams that woke us screaming, but there was a recognition there, an unspoken acknowledgement that we were the same kind of broken. We worked well together. Efficient. Professional. After the operation concluded successfully, a small cult of tech heretics who'd been trying to communicate with something in the data streams, all executed. The Forge's machine spirits cleansed. We had 3 days before our next assignments. We spent them together. It wasn't romantic, wasn't even really sexual, though that was part of it. Mostly it was just being with someone who understood. Someone who didn't flinch when I woke up gasping. Someone who knew why I counted things compulsively, why I checked every door 3 times, why I couldn't eat without scanning the room first. Someone who did the same things. We didn't talk about a future. Didn't pretend this was going to be anything other than what it was. Just 3 days of not being completely alone. She died 4 months later, possessed by something that wore her face and her voice and spoke with her memories, and she begged us to kill her before the transformation completed, and Brother Sergeant Marcus granted that mercy because I couldn't. I just stood there frozen while the thing that used to be Christina screamed through her mouth. They burned her body in the standard fashion, and I filed the report and moved on to the next case, because that's what we do. That's all we can do. I don't remember what her face looked like anymore. Isn't that strange? I can remember every detail of the boy in the cathedral, can see his expression of perfect faith whenever I close my eyes, but Christina is just a blur now. A feeling, a brief moment of connection in an ocean of isolation. Sometimes I wonder if she was even real, or if I invented her, if the entire experience was some kind of stress, hallucination, or psychic bleed-through. But I have the reports, the documentation, the signed forms. She existed. She died. She's gone. That's the only certainty. The current assignment is on an agri world. Reports of contaminated crop yields, livestock mutations, workers experiencing shared nightmares. Classic signs of low-level warp corruption, probably seeping through a weak point in reality somewhere in the planetary crust. We've been here 8 weeks, conducting interviews, taking samples, mapping the affected zones. It's spreading. Started as a single farm complex, now encompasses 14,000 hectares and growing. The mutations are getting worse: grain with teeth, livestock that scream in human voices, soil that moves when no one's watching. We've interrogated 642 workers so far, executed 93 of them. Some were clearly corrupted, sporting obvious mutations or demonstrating psychic phenomena. Others were borderline cases, contaminated through prolonged exposure, but not yet lost. We burned them anyway, can't risk it, can't let the corruption spread. The rest have been relocated to quarantine facilities for observation. Most of them will probably die there. The Administratum hasn't authorized a full planetary evacuation, yet the agri-world's output is too valuable, feeds 3 nearby hive worlds, so we're trying to contain this with surgical precision. Identify and eliminate the source. Cleanse the affected zones. Hope that's enough. Yesterday, we found what might be Ground Zero. A silo complex in the oldest part of the main farming settlement, foundations dating back to the original colonial charter. The entire structure is wrong. Not corrupted wrong, but architecturally wrong, geometrically impossible in ways that make your inner ears scream and your eyes water. We sent servitors in first and they stopped functioning after 30 meters, just locked up completely, all autonomic systems frozen. The tech priest accompanying us declared the entire complex anathema and recommended orbital bombardment. We're going in anyway. Tomorrow, at dawn. Full tactical squad, blessed weapons, sanctified armor, enough faith and firepower to bring down a minor daemon. Brother Sergeant Marcus is leading. I'll be on point because I'm the most expendable, youngest, least experienced of the remaining cadre, most likely to trigger traps or draw fire. Standard protocol. The ones who survive longest go last. The expendable go first. I've accepted this. Made my peace with it. Tonight I'll pray, clean my weapons, write a brief testament in case I don't return. Tomorrow I'll descend into whatever horror is waiting in that impossible silo, and I'll do my duty, and if I die, I'll die serving. That's supposed to be enough. That's supposed to give meaning to this grinding, pointless brutality. Service, duty, sacrifice, the knowledge that you're protecting humanity from threats they can't even imagine. But I can't shake the feeling that it's all futile, that we're just delaying the inevitable. That eventually the darkness will win because it has infinite patience and we have finite resources. Every witch we burn is replaced by 10 more. Every cult we purge spawns 3 others. Every victory is temporary. Every battle just postpones the final defeat. Maybe that's enough, though. Maybe the postponement is the point. Every day we hold the line is another day humanity survives. Another day children are born and grow and live and die natural deaths. Another day the Imperium grinds forward. Another day between now and the ultimate darkness. If that's all we can do, buy time, purchase survival with blood and sacrifice and endless vigilance, then maybe that's enough. has to be enough. Because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means extinction. I think about the boy sometimes. The one in the cathedral. His faith was absolute even though it was wrong, even though it was aimed at something that wanted to devour him. He died believing. I envy that, in a way. That certainty, that sense of purpose. I have duty, but I've lost faith. And duty without faith is just ritual, just going through the motions without understanding why. But maybe understanding doesn't matter. Maybe the motion itself is enough. Keep moving, keep fighting, keep burning witches and hunting corruption and holding the line, and maybe the reasons why become irrelevant. The Ordo's unofficial motto, the one they don't put in the recruitment materials, is, "We do what must be done," not what should be done, not what's right or just or merciful. What must be done, the necessary evil, the price of survival. I've spent 9 years learning what that means, 9 years becoming a necessary evil, and I have 3 more years before they retire me or I die or I break completely. 3 more years of faces and names and executions and reports. 3 more years of buying time for a species that barely knows I exist, and would condemn me if they did. Tonight I'll pray to an emperor I'm not sure is listening. Tomorrow I'll descend into darkness and face whatever is waiting there. If I survive, I'll file my report and move on to the next case. If I don't, someone else will take my place. Another weapon in the Imperium's endless arsenal, another necessary evil doing what must be done. The work continues. The work always continues. The grinding, brutal, essential work of keeping humanity alive one more day. That's all we have. One more day. One more witch burned. One more corruption purged. One more thin barrier between civilization and chaos. It's not enough. It's never enough. But it's all we can offer, all we can give, all we can sacrifice in service to a species that will never know our names or understand our purpose. I am a witch hunter. I have burned 4,000 souls and damned myself in the process. I have 3 years left and I will spend them doing the same thing, over and over, until I'm used up and discarded. This is my life. This is my service. This is my damnation. And tomorrow, when I descend into that impossible silo, when I face whatever horror is waiting in the dark, I will do my duty. Not because I believe anymore, not because I think it matters in any cosmic sense, but because someone has to. Because the work is necessary. Because the alternative is worse. Because what must be done must be done. The Emperor protects, they say. But we're the ones doing the protecting, burning ourselves out in his name, and he doesn't protect us, doesn't comfort us, doesn't acknowledge our sacrifice. We do it anyway. We do it because we must. We do it until we can't anymore, and then someone else takes our place, and the work continues, grinding forward through the centuries, buying time, always buying time, one day at a time, one life at a time, one sacrifice at a time. I will descend tomorrow. I will face the darkness. I will probably die. And if I do, I will die having served, having done my duty, having been useful to the end. That's all we are. That's all we can be. Tools, weapons, necessary evils in an evil galaxy. It has to be enough. It has to be.